This is really the second episode of Chiefs Chronicles, the very first one for YouTube. This is going to be our second one for podcast, and I'm glad everybody could join us and listen in on this. I've got Jason Coble here, and he's got a lot of things to talk about, and then him and I are going to have a pretty good discussion there toward the end of this. Please listen, and any comments that you'd like to post, as long as they're positive, we're happy to hear them. If you have negative comments, that's for someone else's podcast, not this one. And with that being said, Jason, just tell me a little bit about yourself right off the bat. You know, where you are, where you're from, and let's get into some of your experiences.
Okay. Well, like Chief said, my name is Jason Coble. I'm 41. I'm from Dubuque, Iowa. I am a former EMT. I did that for right around 3 years. I had some rough experiences both on the job and with more accumulating stuff off the job that kind of led into some really rough roads. That said, being a first responder is kind of an identity. And once you lose that identity, you don't really know what else to do. So about a year ago, we started the process of getting me back into it. So I am now back, starting from the bottom, back in EMT basic school, which is a really weird feeling after you've gone through so much. I start that the 7th, and I'll continue that all the way through the paramedic and as far as it'll take me.
Wow. So, I mean, starting back over from the beginning, how far advanced were you exactly? I mean, tell me about your career up to the point where you had to start back over.
I was right at the tail end of paramedic school. I was working as an EMT right at the tail end of paramedic school when the tragedy struck. I had worked for an EMT for 2 different services and volunteered for another one. So I was living and breathing EMS. Actually, believe it or not, it didn't start out as EMS. It started out as I wanted to be an officer. I wanted to be a police officer so bad. And I joined the Dubuque Auxiliary Police Department. Now, before anybody gets the wrong idea, that is not a certified law enforcement whatsoever. I was not an officer. I was not allowed to carry a gun. I had absolutely no arrest rights, but I was with those guys a lot. And I realized that this is a lot harder than I thought. I mean, back in those days, we're talking 2002, 2003 area. It's really hard to become a cop.
Absolutely. But you were around enough to kind of build that brotherhood, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Some of these guys I still talk to today. Some of the guys that left the department, moved to Atlanta, Georgia, I'm still in contact with him. Actually, quite a few of them I still keep in contact with. God, these guys have made it so far in their career, too. I'm so impressed by some of these guys. Actually, one of them, we don't really know each other too well, but he's my stepdaughter's uncle, and he's a great guy, too.
You know, it's amazing to me, like you said, you know, that you see somebody progress that you know and that you've been around. That's an amazing thing to see. I know, you know, a lot of the guys that I worked on the Kansas side with, you know, they definitely progressed, and that was really good to see. But, you know, obviously as a chief, you know, you take a lot more stock in your guys, you know, than you do as a sergeant. Mm-hmm. And seeing the guys that I had there progress and go on to larger agencies and get on TAC teams and, you know, drug task force and things, and even move up to a state level, you know, you're right. It's good to see.
It is. Watch these guys come so far. In fact, I just seen a picture of one of them the other day. His TAC team member. It's so impressive.
Yeah. You know, I've seen some guys that I really thought would do well that just, I don't know, they just kind of just fell right off the mountainside too. But, you know, and I don't know if I'm included in that group. I'm not sure. I'm sure somebody looks at me that way, and that's fine. But, you know, as far as your deal, you know, EMT, paramedic, you know, that's a big thing, man. That takes a lot of training. It really does. I've gone through some combat medicine and learned a lot there, you know, in doing that. But I mean, that's nothing compared to what you've got to learn.
Well, I don't know. Some of that TCCC stuff, that's pretty cool. You
Yeah,
guys,
well,
you guys get a baptism by fire real quick with that.
that's a good way to put that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't think the general public understands, even in the training, I'm not saying that you're exposed to any kind of trauma during the training itself, but, in the training you've received, the first go around and this time as well, have you received anything that made you believe you were going to have some kind of help with any trauma that you ended up in?
See, here's the funny thing. The first time we went through, the only advice we really got was, guys, you're going to see some really nasty stuff. It's going to happen. Just find a way to deal with it. We're like,
Right.
Okay. The culture at the time was, you're either going to handle it or you're going to wash out. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Now, actually, I'm looking at my book right now, this second, and there is a whole section on emotion and stress, psychological aspects of stress, the well-being of the EMT, accumulative stress, post-traumatic stress. This became a big thing now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's huge now. I don't know what the hell I stepped on there. It is huge now, definitely. I'm glad to hear that they've got some of that in the manuals too. But did you receive anything? I mean, and I'm not trying to. This most definitely is not to be negative toward anything in the literature that you go through, or any of the teachings or trainings or anything that you go through. I know me as law enforcement, when I went through the academy, so our last day, basically, in the academy, our last full day, they showed us videos all day long of officers getting killed. Everything you could think of, and it was in car video, and you got to, I don't say you got to, but you ended up hearing the last gasps of life. And
Agonal respirations.
Exactly. The death breath, and, it was eye opening to a couple of guys for sure, but that was as close to traumatic event training as we got.
We didn't even receive that. It was, what we were basically told, and I'm trying to think of how exactly he said it was, I can't explain it to you. You have to experience it, which in hindsight wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
And this is back when 2 wars are going on. So to talk about post-traumatic stress for an EMT always felt like we're taking away from the soldiers, airmen, Marines, sailors.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good idea. It wasn't a good mindset. But no, most of what we were told was, you're going to experience it. So you just have to experience it.
And I get it. They taught us a lot of stuff about, in the academy, they touched on the warrior mindset. And then of course, my continuing education, when I got into a lot of the other, combat ensuing things, we got into the warrior mindset quite a bit. And I learned a lot from that, but I didn't learn, all I learned about that was, no matter what, how to fight to stay alive. And that's all I learned. Yep. I didn't learn how, after you stay alive, what you do with it and how you handle everything that goes on in your brain. And I definitely, I want to get into that stuff with you for sure, here in just a few minutes, but, I'll tell you what, man, Jason, if you don't mind, let's dive into your story, man, and just tell me what you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. Well, I'm pretty much going to spill it all. I mean, this is set up to help people. So, the first service I worked for, was basically, it was set up so cool, man. It was just a factory, but a factory that had its own doctor, nurse, and EMS response right there. And I can remember the very first call. Actually, I've met my best friend there. He's chief of police up in Hazel Green right now. The very first thing I remember is watching a man blow himself up, and I'm not kidding you. There was big brush piles out there, and we had our own little fire they'll set up there. So Jim and I asked him permission to use his name. Jim and I went there to watch him burn this brush pile. And he was supposed to put 5 gallons of diesel fuel on there, which I thought was just a little bit ridiculous. But what he put was 5 gallons of fuel on there.
Ooh.
And I just remember it going boom. It was bad. He didn't have to get taken out or anything. In fact, he was scared about losing his job, so he was pretty lucky. We tackled him. People get lit on fire, they want to run, and that the stop, drop, and roll doesn't register. So we tackled him. We patted him off. We cut his clothes off. So I mean, you're talking about nylon stuff that's going to melt into your skin. So got him in the shower, and we're like, you need to go to the hospital. No, you need to go to the hospital. He's like, no, I got to finish this out. If I get caught here, I'm going to lose my job. So that one ended up, it ended really good. I was wondering later on, and it didn't compute at the time what I had just seen, why I was smelling burnt flesh when I went home. Why is this happening? You go back the next day, a guy took the wrong turn or used the wrong machine. He sliced almost his calf muscle completely off, stuff like that. So then I moved to another service, but then I started volunteering up in another service that was more oriented towards, it was a volunteer service, so you were always wearing a pager. And I loved EMS so much that I would go up there and I would stay there until calls would come in. A fair share of trauma, nothing that was really bothering me. I noticed that I started getting a little more shaky, a little more jittery, but I just chalked it up to nerves in school. I was in some of the harder parts of school. I was in advanced cardiac life support, which is where a lot of medics wash out, so maybe I'm just stressed out from school. Wasn't sleeping as much. My wife at the time, I want you to keep this in mind, is a nurse. So she's noticing changes in me. I'm a lot more snappy. I'm drinking a lot more. And these aren't even the bad calls yet. I'm a little more isolated, where all I want to do is go up it's almost like a firehouse. Well, I'll just call it the firehouse. Go up to the firehouse and sit there and wait for calls to come in. I'm not at home being a husband like I should be. So it's a quiet place to study.
Let me slow you down just a second here. So I just want to touch on this real quick, because to me, isolation is the first sign for a family member to see. And you isolated yourself basically by, going and being at the firehouse and waiting for that call now. And I understand that can be seen as a couple of different things. You're either gung-ho, which I'm sure, your brothers, they probably thought, man, this dude's gung-ho. He's ready to go. He loves his job, but yet your family's probably like, where's my husband? Where's my dad? And so,
exactly,
that I get it. That's your way of isolation. Yeah.
Exactly what it was. And I was masking it by thinking that I'm just being gung-ho, when the reality is I don't want people seeing me, because this is my life's dream. I don't want them to know that I am under duress. I need that. This can't happen. Yeah. So I make it through ACLS and PALS, which is Pediatric Advanced Life Support, which, believe me, that's going to come in later. And it's one of the hardest calls I've ever been on. And now I want a quick disclaimer. This is not a call that I was on, but to celebrate, I have a friend, or had a friend, who lived down in Kansas. And ironically, he told me to come down and see him. I had not kept in touch with his family at all. I had no idea he was isolating himself. I had no idea he had cut off contact with everybody except for his dog. So it was about a 6-hour drive. I get about 90 minutes outside of there, and he's like, hey, bro, why don't you stop and grab something to eat? Which I thought it just didn't make sense. He knew I was driving all this way to come see him. I think at the time we were going to have a few beers and stuff like that. And okay, but it seemed to be the busiest restaurant in the state of Kansas, which I thought was also kind of weird. So I got to take out, and I got to his house, and I got to, I'll never forget this, man. I got to the door, and there was a note that said, "Harden your heart."
Damn, brother.
This ain't right. I get in there, and it is a crime scene. There is blood everywhere. So what he had done was he knew enough about anatomy to know that if he slit the inside of his thigh, he would hit the femoral artery, or at least try to. And he didn't get that because that's pretty deep in there. But what he did do is he cut his wrist so far it almost took his hand off.
Man.
I don't believe what I'm seeing at the time. Like how I was just talking to you. What is going on? And so I get in there and I grab whatever I can find for a tourniquet and I tight it as tight as I can. And I got 911 on speakerphone and I'm pumping on his chest and doing CPR, and I swear I'm doing good CPR, but there's nothing. Usually when you do good CPR, you can see some color return to the patient.
Right.
There's nothing. His lips are blue, his face is blue. I did not notice that there was a clear zip tie wrapped around his neck, as tight as it can go. He meant to get the job done that day. My wife told me when I went home, my husband didn't come home after that. And that part really hurts because of what ended up happening to her. That my husband didn't come home. When I got home, I was drinking. And that's all I was doing. I was drinking and I was studying. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a father. I was absent. And
now this guy was a buddy of yours. I mean, he's a friend of yours, right?
He's one of my best friends. Yep.
So, Jason, when that all took place, what did you think about counseling or seeking anything like that at all? I mean, was that even in your mind?
No, it was in 2006. The wars were really heating up, and
Oh, yeah.
I come from a lot of family that are military. I come from some of my greatest influences, including guys I've never even met in my life, like Marcus Luttrell, are special operators. You take it, you process it somehow. You don't have to think about counseling when you don't need it, right? Because you're the people that are supposed to call you for help. You're not supposed to call people for help. Little did I know at the time that would be one of the worst, gravest decisions I've ever made in my life. So no, I like, here, I'll numb it down any way I can. So just if I wasn't studying and at class, and I wasn't even volunteering as much as I once did. If I wasn't at work, class, or studying, I was drinking. It's the only way to get to stop. The dreams started then. I replayed that again and again and again. What if I got there sooner? What if I just said, screw the food, I'm going to get there. I could have stopped him. I could have done something. Why didn't I see the signs? I should have seen the signs. I'm trained to see the signs. There was no signs, Chief. There was none. He's good. He knew exactly what I would be looking for, and he made sure that none of those signs were visible. And to kind of explain, he called me down there for that specific reason. Is he had isolated himself so much and so far from people, he did not want his dog to starve to death or die of thirst. No one was coming to check on him.
So his initial reason to get in touch with you really was to make sure that his dog was taken care of after he was gone,
Yep.
right?
Yep. He knew.
Let me ask you, man, because this is something that's kind of just burning a little hole in the back of my head, because I've been through this. I had an officer when I was a corporal. I had a chief that was well, I won't say a lot about him, but anyways, I had a chief that had me sit in on a termination of an officer that was all about nothing but law enforcement, and he ultimately took his life. And I actually was blamed a little bit for him taking his life, and so I didn't see the scene, but I kind of get what you're coming from. But let me ask you, man, walking into that whole thing, dealing with it, you got any anger toward that guy?
I did. I did at first. And the reason why I say it's past tense is because I almost became that guy.
Yeah.
I was just like, how could you do this to me? You're your brother to me. Like, why would you do this? How could you do this? You're supposed to be like family to me. And I've forgiven him because I don't think it computed in his mind what exactly what was going to do to me. I think in his mind, he saw a way out. He knew his dog was going to be taken care of. He knew his family was going to be notified, and he knew nobody else was going to come in there and see that, except for obviously law enforcement and whoever needed to come in. Yeah, I was really angry for a long time at him.
I can see on one side of that, Jason, where, and I don't know if you felt this or not. If you did, I'm sure it was quite a while after the fact, but I can see where maybe, I'm not going to call it an honor, but maybe he looked at it as though you were the one person that he knew that they could step up and take care of everything for him.
Yeah. It took a long time to get there. Mostly I hated myself because I missed the zip tie. The zip tie. Had I not seen the zip tie, truthfully, he had bled out. There's no saving him. You can do all the CPR in the world, but if you ain't got no blood to circulate, there's nothing there for you.
Yeah.
But I was just, how could I miss this? I was trained better than this. I was really, really good at this. But the tunnel vision kicks in and all you see is the wound and you have no pulse and you're not breathing. But you're right. In fact, it was sort of an honor to be like, he wanted me to be the last person and take care of things because he knew I could spare his family the scene of it. Or that, I think the other part is, God knows when bodies are left in homes and they're not discovered, what happens to the body. And I know he did not want that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. No, I commend you on that, man. What you did, going in there and being in that situation, especially with someone that you were, so familiar with, that's heroic, man. That's what that is. That's heroic.
I appreciate that. So she had said to me, my husband didn't come home. And she was right. He didn't. I barely talked to her about it at all, except for tell her, he's gone. That's all there is to it. We move on. So on a rare moment where I wasn't drinking, I went up to the station and I was studying, and we had a call come in. Motor vehicle accident with personal injury. Cool. These are my favorite, man. We get patching people up, get them to the hospital, and it's good to go. You did your job. I thought it would be healing for me to help someone else, especially a trauma patient at this point.
Right.
When we got on this scene, this was ultimately my demise. The first thing I saw, God, to this day, was a little shoe. And when I looked into that car, fire, actually, it was such a rural area that fire had to come from a different city. Even their volunteer fire did. So they're out a ways yet. So are we supposed to extract a patient? Absolutely not. But when it's a minor, I don't care. Fire me. Do whatever you have to. It's a baby.
Yep.
We'll deal with all that later. You can sue me. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. It's a child. When I looked in there, this baby, which she was eviscerated, and meaning some of her insides run her outside. She was spurting blood. So, okay. I've never paused at a scene before. As soon as I walked out and saw that shoe, I was just, oh my God. Get her on the truck, bagged her. The problem with this whole thing is Could I have done something? Probably not, but there's scope of practice issues. I'm not a certified paramedic yet. I can't start an IV on her. I can't do this stuff. Even though I went through pediatric advanced life support, I know how to do all this stuff. But if I do, my EMS career is over. There's a scope of practice that you have to follow. This was the one time that I absolutely lost it. We got her to the hospital. She had a pulse. She was not going to make it. I mean, you know the odds when you see it. She's gone. We were doing some paperwork, talking to some of the officers, and they want to know what we saw, stuff like this. And obviously we have officers from another state because we had to transport her back into Iowa to a higher care level of care. Yes. So they had officers from that area come in, and they're talking, asking, and as it turned out, her father was drunk, and this accident didn't need to occur. He decided that he needed to go somewhere at a high rate of speed, and he rolled the car. But I remember talking to some of those officers, and the only thing I heard out of the room that he was in, getting treated with minor injuries, was I heard one of the officers say, "It does not look like she's going to make it." And his response was, "What is going to happen to me? What is going to happen to you, sir? You fucking killed your daughter. What's going to happen to you? I hope you rot in a cell for the rest of your life."
Exactly.
That's the one time I lost it. An officer knew me, said, "You're going now. You're walking out the door now. You're going. Coble, you're out. You're going." That was it for me. My dream was gone. I didn't want it anymore.
Yeah.
None of it.
No, I get that.
So then the nightmares, boy, the nightmares. To this day, when I see a child's shoe, I'm just,
oh, yeah.
It takes you right back there. So I spent the next, so that was 06. So 08, my wife left because that's all I did is spend the next 2 years of my life drinking and isolating and not talking to anybody. And the suicidal thoughts came in. And all I could think about was, if this is what life is, I don't want it. What did I do to deserve this? What did these people do to deserve this? Why couldn't I have helped? Why couldn't I have just done my job? And the self-blame was insane. These two incidences specifically, I had no control over. There's nothing I could have done to help. But your mind doesn't allow that to happen, especially when it is your job to save someone's life. It is your job to be there and to bring them back. But you're a human being. You're not God. You can't bring back the dead. So my wife looked at me and said, "You have become someone that you're not. We need to end this." How could you not respect that decision? I know. I said, I'm not coming back though. I'm not coming back from this. She had moved on and got into another relationship, and I was happy for her. Actually, I wasn't happy for her. I was happy for her, but I wasn't.
Right.
She had filed for divorce, and to this day, I don't know, and I don't want to know if this was her last attempt at getting me help or if she was truly unhappy with the situation that she was in. But she said to me, "If you go to get help, there's kids to raise here. If you go to get help, we can continue our marriage." And it could go either way. One, she could have been serious, or two, this was go get some help. So I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. By this point, I had been drinking so much, nonstop, continuously, acting completely outside myself. that I was physically dependent. So, your brain gets used to a chemical. It's not going to like it when you don't feed it.
Exactly.
So I would have to go to detox 3 days before I left for detox. She was killed in a car accident.
Oh, man.
That was it. And some of the same thoughts come back in. If I had only been there, if I could have done something, why everything around me is falling apart? These are the people that I loved, and they're all being taken from me. It gets worse from there. So I'm separated from everybody at this point.
right.
My grandma and my dad are about the only two people I'm even still talking to, and they don't even know what's really going on. They know I quit school, which was what, he was just like, I have no idea what this is about, but okay. I was acting like a complete dick to everyone. I wasn't sleeping. I was in that house by myself, and all I was doing was drinking. I was doing nothing else but that. That was the only thing I knew to do to numb it, which by this time, you have to remember, there's reports coming back from these two wars about soldiers having problems in this thing called PTSD.
Right.
So I didn't accept it. She was gone. I did not want anything to do with society or anyone else. So I spent the next 6 years of my life in that same drunken stupor. Now, in that time, so from 2006 until 2016, I lost a total of 13 people. Each and every one of those people, not a single one of them, was over the age of 40 years old. There was 6 suicides, 2 of which were military veterans, people that I truly admired and looked up to greatly. These people were my heroes, man. And there was a couple more accidents, an overdose from somebody that I didn't even know was on drugs to begin with. But then again, how could I? Because I was lost in my own personal hell.
Right.
There came a time where enough was enough, and you want to talk about a God wink, so I couldn't take it anymore. The dreams, the visions, the nightmares, these are nonstop. The guilt, the survivor's guilt, that didn't really have a name at the time, or at least I had never heard of it. So I did one of the worst things that I could think to do, and I took a rope and I wrapped it around my neck and I put it on a doorknob and I just plunged forward. And that was supposed to be it. I had absolutely no idea that I had one of my last remaining friends coming over to check on me, because people at this point knew that it was getting pretty bad. So as I passed out, I woke up to him holding me down, paramedics coming in, and you're going to hospital. You're going to hospital. So I stayed up in the hospital for a couple of days. They kicked me loose. I was right back to drinking again. There was a very, very rare moment of clarity on July 9th of 2016 where I said, I have 2 choices. This is it. I can grab a loaded pistol and I can end this.
Yeah.
Or I can finally admit that this is beyond me. I can't do this. I need help. I have the coolest friend, and I can't name her name because I don't want to get ethical violations or anything, but she's a social worker, and she still to this day keeps in contact with me, and she fought like hell. At that time, it was really hard to get into treatment, both for alcohol and mental health and all of it. She fought like hell, and she got me into a detox center. So I went to the detox, and I was like, I could probably do this on my own. She's like, oh, no. You're going to treatment. She sent me to treatment, and I stayed there. Chief, I stayed there for 5 months. I didn't have to stay there for 5 months. But I wanted to, because we unpacked everything. Anything from I could not have done anything with my friend's suicide, to the baby was out of my control, to one of the hardest things was that I had always said to myself, God took the wrong parent that day with my wife. She was a nurse. She was an angel. She was amazing. God took the wrong parent. So I had a lot of anger towards him. There was probably a month of alcohol counseling and then another 4 months of grief counseling and PTSD. It was round the clock, 24 hours. We unpacked everything, man. And
now, where you went to, I'm sorry, where you went to, did they have any kind of a valor program or anything for, specifically for first responders and military?
I wish they would have, because in a group setting, I was not relating to these people. Some of these people had their own hells and stuff like that, but they just didn't get where I was coming from, nor did I get where they were coming from. And in fact, even some of the staff was like, I'm not exactly sure how to deal with this, or how do we navigate this? We haven't had any service members here. We haven't had any officers or firemen or EMS here. Like, this is a different thing. And so they used a lot of the generic stuff as far as the grief counseling, forgiveness, forgiving yourself, things like that, the stages of grief. You have to grieve. I guarantee you alcohol is not going to help you grieve, things like that. So they did a lot of the generic stuff. And a lot of it I did based on the only thing that I could do was research. And so when I got out of there, I started looking up first responders and PTSD. I had absolutely no idea. To this day, it still astonishes me. A police officer is 5 times more likely to die by suicide than in the line of duty.
Isn't that crazy?
How is this not an epidemic? Why are there not centers for this?
Yeah, I agree with
5
you. 5
times more likely?
Yep.
And then people want to, the culture with police today. I'm sorry, it's disgusting to me, but 5 times more likely. And then you want to attack these people? If you were 5 times more likely to die by suicide, then that means your job is pure hell at times.
Yeah.
You guys are all saints to me. But then even dispatchers are 20% of dispatchers are suffering from PTSD and depression symptoms. And I didn't get that until somebody's like, listen to the North Hollywood shootout dispatch calls, when this poor woman is trying to get her officer to respond, trying. And you can hear her voice cracking. And these dispatchers are trained very well to be calm, and he's not, because he's bleeding out. I have no idea how many Orlando officers retired themselves because after that shootout, they couldn't do it anymore. You guys are known to be extremely strong-minded people. There needs to be something based on the things that we see, the things that we deal with.
Something Sean Ryan and I talked about, kind of off camera too, quite a bit was, the boxes, compartmentalizing things, sticking them in a little box, putting them in your mind, and now it's gone. The problem is those things all come out, and man, the easiest way to deal with them, and I'll tell you, the very first thing, for me, when things came out was, I immediately had to try to figure out, how much can I drink in a day? It almost got to a point where I wanted to find out exactly how much I could drink in a day. It got ugly for me, just like a lot of people. Your case is kind of extreme, man. You've been through hell. But the end result is, where I went, I spent 8 days in a place that I put myself in. And I met some good people, man. I met some great people, made some good friends. But they had a Valor program, but my insurance that I had wouldn't cover that.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to do the Valor deal, and so even in places where they're offering this help to you, you know, and I'm not discounting that. I know no matter what, you are getting some help, but yeah, you know, to have something within reach right there, but because your insurance won't pay for it, you know, you can't do it. But I agree with what you said. Oh yeah, and I agree with what you said earlier. You know, it needs to be something nationwide. I mean, this country needs to get off its ass and stand up and realize, you know, it's time to take care of the people that take care of us.
Yeah. How cool is this country when you can pick up a phone, dial 911, and there is somebody there to protect you or somebody there to help you. They don't know you. They don't and there's nothing for these people, right down to the dispatchers, from police officers all the way through dispatchers. There's nothing specifically to say, okay, we're trained in this. We can understand where you've been. I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the Valor thing with you. I have no idea how that's even fathomable. I have never been so disgusted in my life. Sorry, health insurance companies, but what are you doing? Yeah,
I mean, that's, you know, and here's the thing, you know, excuse me, just getting over this thing. Hopefully, I don't know. Something that so when I went through my 8 days of treatment, and I'm not going to go into specifics because my ex-wife doesn't deserve that, but I wasn't able to do the Valor program. At that point, I was working for a car dealership, and that insurance I carried through there wouldn't take care of that, regardless of what my previous profession was. Now, had I been working for a city, county, state, or federal agency in law enforcement still, maybe they would have. I couldn't tell you, you know, but
right.
You know, either way, I wanted to do it really badly, and I still do. I wish that would have been possible, but you know, I talked to a few different people. I've gotten a lot of emails, you know, as you can figure, but I've had some people that have talked to me about, you know, these places opening up. And I actually spoke with one guy that works for a media agency out of Kansas City. He did a column on me, and he's got a friend, I believe he said Georgia, that is trying to get a thing going where there are these mental health care centers specifically for first responders, and that would be a godsend.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's what's needed. It's what's needed. I was just looking at like some of the statistics. I think it was 2019. There was 241 first responder suicides. Why is there? Okay, so those are the people who went the final limit. How many others are suffering?
Yeah.
There's thousands of people suffering.
Yeah.
And you know as well as I do, when you first start in this career, you're taking on the world.
Oh, yeah.
They don't. Things may have changed now. It seems like they are shifting. They're not. I don't think they're there all the way yet, but they're shifting where you don't have to put the weight of the world on your shoulders. You can talk. In fact, this should be the culture where we want you to talk. Maybe not to your buddies, maybe not to your brothers, but there is a trained professional with each department or service or something where if you have a critical incident, or you find yourself in a crisis, if you're at home and you start shaking uncontrollably and you're medically okay, there needs to be something there.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, this is going to continue.
I think, and just talking to you right now is one that's thought hit my head, but man, how great would it be to have continuing education for family of first responders? Can you
Absolutely.
imagine if your wife and your kids get to go to training and they get to learn, hey, look for these signs in your first responder spouse or father, and watch for this and realize this is what he's going through, and and know that these are triggers. I mean, that would be invaluable.
It would be absolutely life-changing. I mean, at first, we don't necessarily know we're doing it. We just want to be left alone. And
exactly.
That's okay. We think that, but our spouse, our child, hey, Dad, come here. Or, hon, do you want to come here for a minute? I think we need to just sit down and have a talk for a second. And maybe that right there pulls the curtain back for the responder themselves going, oh, okay.
Yep. Well,
all right.
I'll tell you, Jason, for years, once my stuff ended, I'm fortunate enough to be with a woman, my wife, that she wants to do nothing but support me and listen to me and talk to me about things. And she's brought God into my life and some really positive things there. But one of the things, excuse me, they keep trying to tell me I got COVID, but I don't believe them. Yeah. But, one of the things that hit me was looking back, once I was out of the smoke, I looked back and I realized, excuse my language, but man, I was a dick. I was a dick to my kids, my wife and friends and family. And I alienated everybody. And,
Absolutely.
I got to a point. Yeah. And I got to a point there toward the end where, I had a man cave I went to. It's just one little room I had set up, with a TV and stuff. And I'd go in there and shit, I'd be in there until 3 o'clock in the morning, knowing my wife went to bed at 10. And, I didn't, I just didn't want to see people, didn't want to talk to people. I just wanted to just sit, and that was it. And man, I get it. It's a tough road, and there needs to be help out there for everybody. And you're talking about dispatchers. I had a dispatcher named, and I'll say her first name, doesn't bother me, when I was on the Kansas side, a dispatcher by the name of Amy. I had the utmost respect for her. There were a few times where I'd go out on a call, and in that area, it was kind of rural. And so, if I went out on a domestic where, the suspect was still there or something like that, I could always count on her to check on me. Always, my badge number, my radio number at that time was 713. And I'd always hear, I'd be on scene dealing with somebody and I'd hear 713, check, are you okay? 713. The dispatchers, I can't imagine the stress level they go through sitting in that chair, watching that board, listening to all of us.
Right. Especially if it's with you guys, if it turns out to be a combative or violent encounter, they're sitting there knowing they can do nothing except for get more people to you. But how long is that response time? Maybe they're tied up. That's got to be hell on those people. That you always hear them say, my officers. So there's a brother and sisterhood there with all of you guys.
Yeah.
And it's, I think there's, from police academies to EMS school to fire academies, there needs to be something where all these signs, okay, but if you're right, the family members, they need to have their own type of training, because these jobs don't come with a disclaimer that says, so you're going to serve, but this also can damage you for the rest of your life if you leave it untreated. This can turn you into a person that you are not. Like you said, I was a complete dick to everybody. Everybody. People who loved and cared about me and wanted to help, it didn't matter. It was just the switch flips, and unless you are willing to fully admit that, oh man, this is bigger than I am. It's not my fault. Humans are only meant to take so much. Everybody is different. Then you're going to continue to spiral downhill. And I don't want that for people. You don't want that for people. People don't need to look at this as you're damaged goods, you're done. No, that is entirely untrue. You just need to separate yourself for a minute, take a break. That could be 2 or 3 hours. That could be 2 or 3 days. That could be 2 or 3 weeks. But everybody today, still to this day that I talk to, that is having a really, really difficult time. It's like, if I speak up, I'm done. I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah.
That does not need to happen.
Well,
It doesn't.
I had a chief one time. He used to tell me, that he always said, the nail that sticks up gets hammered.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, as an administrator, as a chief of police, I mean, you've got, and even as somebody, running a bus or anything, you've got people you got to take care of. Why in the world would you put that kind of bullshit in their head?
It's planting a seed for disaster.
Exactly.
Exactly. You're telling them that it's okay to just sit there and let something fester, and it could be for days, weeks, months, or God forbid years, because you're right, those boxes, they're going to keep filling and filling and filling, especially with you guys, where you can go to a barking dog one minute and the next minute a murder scene, and then follow that up by a domestic dispute. You have to be different people all the time. How many boxes can a person have? And
so, with what you dealt with, with the child's shoe, could you imagine what you'd have been like on the very, if you'd have had a call while you're on that call that you knew you had to respond to immediately after that one was done with that accident? Could you imagine how you would have been on that next one?
I have no idea. I'd be exhausted. I'd be irritable. Oh God, I would be so upset, especially if I had heard her father. But you have to be polite and courteous, especially in today's culture with officers. You don't have a choice, because then you have complaints that come in, followed by investigations and things like that. There's not a day I could do your guys' job. I couldn't.
Well,
I couldn't.
Here's the thing about it. I think the very best city or state that there could ever be would be one where everyone cross trains. And I've always been huge on cross training and having instructors.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if police cross trained with paramedics, if paramedics cross trained with fire and police, and police cross trained with fire? I mean, in dispatch, hell, everybody goes and works a week in dispatch. Could you imagine how the product that would be turned out, how much better it'd be?
It would be absolutely phenomenal. Everybody knows, maybe not necessarily how everybody's feeling, but how everybody's working through things. How it's like a well-oiled machine. We know what's coming from you guys. You guys know what's coming from us. We know that you're dealing with this while we're dealing with this, while we're dealing with this. It would be amazing. It's a phenomenal idea.
Well, I guess we can go start our own department out in No Show, Montana or something, where there's nobody. Just do it that way. Yeah.
I'm game. Yeah. Let's go.
Well,
maybe.
I appreciate your time, man, and I appreciate you talking to me. And I know in the future here soon we're going to do this again, because there's a lot more I want to talk about with you personally. But
absolutely,
I want to end this on a good note. So I've got one story I'm going to tell, just kind of a funny thing that happened in my career. And, if you've got one, feel free to tell it. All right.
Sure.
All right. So I had an officer when I was a chief, little Irish kid, just good kid, man. Just everybody loved him to death. And we had a dead body call, and it was late at night. He ended up going to this call, and he goes and talks to the brothers and sisters of this person that was deceased. And he's just letting them know, hey, we're here for you. Anything you need, just let us know. And he collected all the paperwork he did. He got statements he needed. Everything was good on his end. Did a great job. And what I did was, every morning when I got to work, I'd go in my office, I'd sit down, and I'd watch body camera footage. Number one, because we're the first agency in the state of Missouri to issue body cameras, and I really harped on that, and I wanted to see what improvements could be made. But the biggest thing was, I wanted to see what my guys had gotten into, so I knew what kind of training would be good. And so I was sitting there watching this video, this body camera video from this officer. And he's telling these two elderly women and this one elderly man sitting in this living room, he's telling them, I'm really sorry for your loss. I'd love to stay with you all night. I just can't. But if you guys need anything at all, you call me anytime, night or day. Here's my card. And this lady speaks up and she goes, "What, you're giving me your card? What, you want me to call you? Don't you have school in the morning tomorrow? Don't you have school tomorrow?" Because the kid just looks so damn young, like I said, little Irish kid. He looked like he's about 16, but oh, that poor kid, man, he never lived it down. But there's good things that happen, funny things that happen that keep your spirits up.
I do have one that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Thinking about it. Okay, this is when I was on the auxiliary, before EMS, anything like that. John Kerry was coming through town. This was during the election. So I'm sitting in a room with Secret Service. I'm like extremely intimidated, right? We got federal law enforcement in there. We got every agency you can think of. And I'm just sitting here, this little volunteer with my knee just a shaking. And they're like, "Well, did you guys have a bomb dog?" And of course, at that time, like, no. Like, "Has anybody got a German Shepherd?" I'm like, "No, I have a Basset Hound." They're like, "That'll work." So I go home, I get the Basset Hound, just for show. They were not serious whatsoever, but I'm the guy that went back and got my dog to bring him back so it could play being a bomb dog. They were not serious at all.
Oh, hook, line, and sinker, huh?
This is in front of the Secret Service. So they got me.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, the next time we talk, I'll have to tell you about an anal leakage call I went on. Yeah, it was ugly. Yeah, too bad.
That's not a good call, Chief.
No, not at all, man. But hey, Jason, man, I appreciate your time very much. You've got an absolutely amazing story to tell, and I know we're going to hear more about it. I know in my future podcast, I plan to talk to you about some more things and discuss the mental health side of it a little bit more too. I'm just kind of running out of time at the moment, but
absolutely.
But thank you again, man. I appreciate everything about you, and I'll tell you what, the paramedics are who we plan on saving our lives. Absolutely. So my hat's off to you. Well,
thank you, sir.
You guys are our heroes. I used to have a T-shirt that said, "God made police officers so firemen could have heroes." Yeah, which is true. I mean, it's true, but paramedics are our heroes, and EMTs are our heroes because those are the people that are going to save our lives when shit goes real south.
We cannot do our job without you guys because there's two rules: is BSI on, body substance isolation on, and is the scene safe. We can't do our jobs until you guys go in there and risk your life, especially if it's a violent call, to secure the scene. So you guys are ours too. It's just a well-oiled machine.
Well, that's appreciated. And unfortunately, I think sometime soon, probably in this country, it's going to get to a point where first responders are targeted regardless of profession, just like our military was in the Middle East.
Absolutely. And it's almost to the point where, guys, if none of us are left, who is there going to be? What are you going to do? You are on your own. And if you want to live in a society where you are on your own, I wish you very good luck, and may God be with you because you're going to need him.
You got it. Well, thank you very much, Jason, man. I hope you have a good night, and I'll be talking to you soon.
It was an honor, Chief. Thank you.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you. That was the interview with Jason. It was pretty heart touching. It was for me, for sure. Man, what a guy. What a life this guy's dealt with. A lot of tragedy. I know there's a lot of other people out there that have gone through things. A lot of other first responders out there that have gone through these sort of things. Get in touch with me. Let me know who you are. Let's talk about some stuff. I know that there's some options that are coming out. I'm getting emails here and there with different outlets that should become available at some point. For counseling and things. And I look forward to that for sure. And I'll put those things out there. Just remember this, like I said in the beginning in my intro. I'm doing this on my own time. And if you want to help contribute, you want to help fund this, You can contribute to either my PayPal or my Venmo. My PayPal is ghallgrimson at live.com, live.com, and my Venmo is at ghallgrimson. And I thank you for anything you do. Anything is going to help this go forward. And the world needs to know about this. This country needs to know about this. And the public needs to know about this because, you know, compassion needs to be shown to the first responders, the law enforcement, the police officers, the paramedics, the EMTs, the firemen, you know, our military, you know, without a doubt. Um, just, uh, just do your part and have a good day. Watch for the next series coming up. The next video in this series will be out sometime soon, probably within a week. Thank you very much.